Samael Aun Weor, born Victor Manuel Gomez Rodriguez. Samael was a student of the Western esoteric tradition. He started out studying the Theosophy of Madame Blavatsky. Later, he was drawn to the College of the Rosy Cross, and after the death of the founder Cromheller, he diverted from Rosicrucianism and started his own syncretic system dubbed Universal Gnosis, or Gnosis for short. This was not a Gnosticism filled with demiurgs and dualism. On the contrary, the center of gravity of the entire system hinges on personal experience. Nothing should be taken for granted. Everything should be tested, tried, and proved. For in the words of Samael, Gnosis is the natural functioning of the consciousness. Indeed, direct experience of the truth is the goal. Usually in religious systems, we do find the founders are individuals who have direct experience, but over time, as the founders pass away and other custodians come and guard the tradition, slowly and surely, degeneration takes place. Eventually, the doors are completely closed to the other world, and instead we hear things like, "The age of prophecy has ended. Now all you need to do is believe." Samael, like all practitioners of the Western esoteric tradition, sought to be an antithesis to this kind of attitude. In essence, by forging a system that can kind of act as an objective science, which potentially anyone can use to cultivate within themselves the faculties required to experience the truth directly. And fundamentally, this always boils down to a set of techniques that are based on a philosophical and cosmological system that, if practiced regularly enough and in the correct way, will yield results. And after this first awakening, there's then a sequence or a process that is unfolded, a continued cultivation of the individual until godhood or apotheosis, permanent union with the divine. It's not just you awake and that's the end. There's this continuous evolution or revolution of one's spiritual nature into higher and higher things. This fundamentally is the Western tradition in a nutshell. But what does Samael add? Okay, so when you look at Samael's teachings as a whole, the first thing you notice is the orientation towards personal experience. The next thing you'll find is that Samael has this very broad generalist approach, which gives the impression that he's very widely read. In his works, he references many other systems, many other authors. There's a whole list of mythological references, references to other cultures, references to different literature. He'll write a book on music theory and then a book on criminology. It very much seems to be that Samael is trying to become a sort of South American Rudolf Steiner. And in essence, he goes further than just syncretism. Samael actually calls himself, or what he does, perennialism. So maybe on a certain level you can compare what he does or contrast what he does to someone like, say, Mircea Eliade. So there's this idea that there's this something that is eternal. Like, we live in the world of change, the temporal world. If you think of a line, a horizontal line, this is the line of biology, of time. As time goes by, something is born, something grows, develops, changes, and eventually it dies. However, intersecting that line is something else, a vertical line, the line of eternity. The world of eternity itself expresses itself on the horizontal line in different epochs, in different ways. So Samael's thesis is that there is this fundamentally one doctrine, or perhaps it's better to say that Samael believes that there is this one unified knowledge, and that in different epochs it wears different masks. In one epoch it will be called Hermeticism, in another Sufism, in another again Rosicrucianism. But it is the thing behind the mask that we're looking for. Or as Samael would put it, he would say something like, all religions are precious beads strung on the necklace of divinity. The implication here being, what's important is the string. So, Samael is a perennialist, and he claims that this perennialism can be verified through direct experience, through Gnosis. So what do? What are the techniques? The main one, practiced by Samael and his followers, appears to be Raja Yoga. Now, Samaelians, the followers of Samael, don't really appear to have an understanding of this link. If you talk to someone who is from a Gnostic society of Samael, they may have an understanding that there are different types of yoga, like Karma Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. But when you tell them or talk to them about Raja Yoga, and you mention, oh, what about Raja Yoga? They just kind of go, oh yes, Raja Yoga, the yoga of the mind. And yet, when you ask them, how do you meditate? What do? They go through asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which is literally the system of Raja Yoga. It's literally just Raja Yoga. This is, of course, because Samael himself seems to have studied the works of Swami Sivananda. This makes sense, because in the times when Samael was a member of the Rosicrucian Society, this was a period where certain schools of Western occultism would be drawing much from the East. And you would often get these syncretic things where a school of Western ceremonial magic would then fuse in Kundalini Yoga into their practice. So everyone in his Rosicrucian college would have probably been studying yoga. It would have been like the hot new thing at his time. So of course he's going to read it. And of course he's going to aim to understand and practice Raja Yoga. And so when he teaches it, he's probably going to use that outline. Now, to his credit, later on, he moves more to a kind of more Zen style, and even sprinkles in the teachings of Krishnamurti. So he does develop. He doesn't just stay at Raja Yoga. But this isn't all. He also supplements the meditations with different mantras. So you could even describe Samael's system as a letter system, as a system of mantras themselves. The manipulation of vowels in different orders, plus or minus a few consonants here or there. The problem with his teaching of the mantras is he basically just talks about the mantra and what its function should be, and then that's it. There doesn't seem to be any detail. It's just, do this mantra and corresponding chakra will awaken. Good, and that's it. That's all he gives you. There's no, what do you do if you hit a wall? There's no, what does it mean exactly to open a chakra? Does it open instantly? Does it open partially? Is it a process? Is it instantaneous? If I see lights, but then I don't see lights anymore, and then it just comes and goes, like what's happening? What do I do with that? What about the energies? I do a practice with a specific mantra and I feel energy in one place, and the next time I feel it in the other. Is that good? Is that good? Am I doing it right? What's going on? Now, I should say, I'm not fully criticizing this mode of teaching, because a lot of people do this. They will give practices in their book that aren't, maybe they're complete, but, without the full process. They'll teach you the beginning, they'll teach you the cause, what the practice is, how to do it, and then they'll teach you the effects, but they won't really teach you the process and the conditions and the trials that may arise. And the whole idea behind that is if you hit a wall, then you seek out the school, you seek out the teacher kind of thing. So the critique isn't against Samael. My problem is when you then go try to find his followers, find the people who are supposed to hold the lineage, they don't seem to know much either. They all seem to be hitting their heads against a wall. All of them. And it seems every now and then one will hit their head against the wall so consistently that maybe the wall breaks, and it's as if they've attained, and that gives everyone else inspiration. But that's not an objective science of spiritual awakening. Because of the way they've done that, that's not repeatable by everybody. There's no real technique in there that they can tell someone else to give them help. All they can do is just be a hype man and hype you up to keep hitting your head against the wall until the wall breaks, or usually your head. And in all seriousness, if the wall does break, does that mean you attain? Like, can you really just Homer Simpson your way to the absolute? I feel like there's some kind of oral tradition which has been lost. And really, once you see that, you can then say that about pretty much all other aspects of his doctrine. Astral projection techniques, which are mainly just mantras. Rune yoga techniques, which are just postures and mantras. He's got some elements of ritual magic in there, from the PGM, from the Heptameron, from Heinrich Agrippa, magic squares, a little bit of Levi, but it's all incomplete. It's as if he wants you to complete it, but that's not how they see it. They get very precious about their doctrine and how dare you change something that my master made kind of thing. And this is only if you find the ones that actually study their entire doctrine. Most don't seem to. So more than just a set of techniques, what it seems that Samael is teaching you is how to think in a synthetic manner. Samael when you read his literature, he's not telling you what to think. To me, it seems more like he's teaching you how to think, which is what all good authors do. Unfortunately, to synthesize something, you actually have to interact with it, which his followers don't seem to do, and don't seem to be very keen on. There seems to be this weird elitism and poo-pooing away of everything that hasn't been touched by the hands of their master. And well, to Samael's credit, he seemed to have gone to Theosophists, to Rosicrucians, to psychics, to channelers, to spiritists. Samael seems to have lived a magical life, and this life is what's reflected in his doctrine. So I have this weird kind of ambivalence, because on the one hand I'm like, Samael, yeah, he's just put him up there next to Blavatsky and Gurdjieff. He's just another initiate in the Western esoteric tradition. He's got this broad generalist view of the tradition in general, which is a good thing. In a sense, things like that make a perfect kindergarten school. Like, if you know nothing about esotericism, having this general overview of like Kabbalah, Fourth Way teachings, Rosicrucianism, Theosophy, that's actually can be a big help. And it's not just the broadness that makes it a good starting point as well. I should say, he seems to have the correct trajectory in his teachings. So there's a lecture by Samael called The Cosmos Human. And in this, he talks about cultivating an interior sun, Sol Invictus, the immortal sun, the sun that never sets. How very Mithraic. But then he continues, and he says, you don't just build an internal sun, you have to cultivate an entire interior solar system. And then it doesn't just stop there. You have to cultivate an entire interior galaxy, constellations upon constellations. You need to become a galactic man. And then even beyond that, the eventual goal is the universal man, the absolute man, which is pretty crazy because that almost parallels the exact same aim as Julius Evola's magical idealism, which is wild. So what does it mean to become an absolute man or an absolute individual? It means that your conscious awareness extends beyond the farthest limits of the galaxy itself, and that your physical body becomes the outer tendrils of the literal universe. Based. Think of it kind of like a Western version of the Dharmakaya. And so to me, I'm like, yeah, I have no qualms with recommending Samael. Like, go read him. He says some things that are true, some things he makes mistakes. Yeah, whatever. He's got a broad horizon and correct trajectory. Teachings like this, in a sense, are good because they give you a flavor for something that's actually good. And then you're able to kind of turn down the noise of all the New Age slop and bracket that out and make your way through all of the more, tacky, useless, New Agey stuff and get to something that's actually good. But now, I think it's time that I actually fully describe the followers of Samael. So I'll start from my own personal experience. It should be obvious by now by what I'm saying that you can tell I've had some connections with certain Samael groups. But in my defense, and let me set up this as context. So, if you're like me, you'll remember back in the day what it was like to try and find esoteric schools. Like, yeah, you can go join the Freemasons or whatever, but where do you find the Hermetic schools? Where do you find the Rosicrucian schools? Where do you find, secret magic groups? They don't necessarily advertise that well, but, the internet was around, and so you try to use it, and you find maybe an internet site, and there's an email, and then you email the guy, and then nothing happens. You email, 8 emails gone, it's a dead page. Or maybe sometimes you do find something, you do get a response, or maybe there's a phone number and you manage to call it and you get in contact with the guy. And then there's the other problem, where sometimes you'll get the guy and he'll go, oh yeah, sure, and you pay a little money and he sends you some correspondence courses, and then you're like, sweet, and then when you relook at the website again, all of a sudden, your hometown has been added to the list of branches in the section where it says, this is a worldwide order, and that's interesting, my town just got added, and then you think, wait a second, is this just me? Is this because I'm a student now and he sent me a correspondence course, all of a sudden I'm now a branch of this school in my hometown? And then you look at all the other branches and you're like, is this all he's got? Is this all he's done? Is this what it's like? Is this what the Western esoteric tradition has become? Just some random guy doing an esoteric MLM, sending out random correspondence courses through a website? Or endlessly trying to call dead numbers and dead emails to try and connect to something somewhere? You goddamn Zoomers, you don't even know what it was like. You don't know how hard it was. And those correspondence courses were trash as well, by the way. Like, if you go onto Amazon and type Kabbalah in and buy a random book, you'll learn more Kabbalah from that random book than from all of the shitty monographs that you get from a crappy correspondence course. So, with that context provided, when you look at the Samael groups, to give them their due, they are, in comparison, hyperactive. They immediately get back to you. They've always got courses going, or seemingly always had courses going, always classes running, always retreats coming up. There was always something to do. It's like, okay, well, finally there's someone doing something. And if you don't know who Samael is, and if you never read him and you just hear, oh, there's some spiritual lectures going on, you're like, yeah, sure, I'll turn up. And then you go and there's a well-trained Gnostic instructor. And I say well-trained Gnostic instructor because some of them, you know, you can tell immediately they ain't got much going for them. But if you find a well-trained Samaelian, on the surface, they seem very impressive. And let me tell you why. It's because of this genuine, broad generalist outlook that Samael had. So they learn Samael's doctrine efficiently, and what does that imply? It means that they kind of know theosophy. They kind of know a bunch of Rosicrucianism. They actually know quite a bit of the fourth way. So when you meet a Samaelian, it appears that they know what they're talking about, or it kind of gives you this impression, because if you're a theosophist, you haven't necessarily studied all of Rosicrucianism. So if someone comes to you and they can kind of speak theosophy at you, but then they also know some Rosicrucianism, and you're like, oh, damn, I don't know what that is. Or if you're a Rosicrucian, you don't know all the Rosicrucians out there. So maybe, you know, you're a part of the FRC, and then you meet a Samaelian, and they kind of know Rosicrucians, but then they mention Max Heindel, and you're like, oh, damn, I don't know much about Max Heindel. Or it's like, and then they mention Gurdjieff, and you're like, oh, damn, I know even less about Gurdjieff and the Fourth Way. And likewise with a Fourth Way school, a Fourth Way guy, a Gnostic instructor will be able to talk to them on a certain level, but then they'll be able to say, oh, and then this practice that Gurdjieff says is more of a Rosicrucian practice, and they're like, oh damn, this guy knows Rosicrucianism as well. It gives this general broad outlook, gives them this kind of flavor. It's as if you found someone who just knows everything, and you're like, oh, okay, they can talk the talk, but can they walk the walk? So how do you know someone is trying to deceive you spiritually? And maybe they're not consciously doing it. Maybe they're delusional. But how do you know? How do you know, you meet someone and they can talk about the void really excellently? So much so that they can convince you that they've experienced it, but they haven't. What are the red flags? How can you tell? So the problem with this, it's best explained if we go through with examples. So if someone's trying to deceive you of something physically, like if they tell you that they're a bodybuilder, and you look at them and they're skinny as all hell, you can just tell them, okay, lift that over there, lift it. They can't. They're not it. It's the same with, like, if they say they're a black belt in karate or they've won 100 street fights. You just tell them to put on some boxing gloves. Get in the ring, bro. Let's test you out.
Huh?
You think you beat me in a street fight?
You in a street fight?
Yeah.
You're a podcaster, brother.
You slap them around. You can tell if someone's faking it when they're trying to deceive you about something physical. But what about something mental? What if you meet someone who's trying to fake it about science, or trying to fake that they're a math genius? That's actually a little harder. Because unless you know more than them, it's not immediately obvious. Like, there may be signs, you may be able to, like, in your gut, you'll be like, there's something wrong here. But it actually takes a bit of time before you're like, oh, no, this guy doesn't know what they're talking about. But now, you take it to something which is even more ephemeral. In a spiritual tradition, someone is trying to deceive you. How can you tell? Often, you can't. If someone's faking it, there may actually be not that many signs. After all, the focus in a spiritual tradition is on the spirit, not the physical. So there's literally no physical tells necessarily that someone's a fake. However, tantric schools have a way around this. That is, siddhis, faculties, and magical powers. The idea being, occult abilities are a litmus test for attainment. If you've been lifting weights, the effect would be that you can lift heavier weights than normal people. If you've been doing a lot of math, the effect is that you can do math more and better than a normal person. With spirituality, there is some kind of cognate. And it's not to say that everyone with magical powers is enlightened. Far from it. But it's if someone has no magical powers, no faculties, no cities, they have no initiation, no attainment. And I mean, you can think about the logic for that for specifically the tantric schools. Like Orthodox schools will have a temple, will have a lineage, will have masters. In tantric schools, there's just a bunch of guys in the forest. So how can you tell who's who and who's legit? Well, if someone's able to sense danger when others can't, or if they're able to communicate long distance, or if they're able to heal others, this is seen as a sign of attainment. And these abilities are a result of their spiritual training. Now, in regards to Samael, I never met him, but there are stories that come from his followers. And in these stories, he seemingly displays anomalous qualities: telepathy, precognition, the ability to talk to animals and heal people. But ability is one thing. Are you able to pass that on to another person? That is a completely different question. You know, being a world champion boxer and being someone who is a really good boxing coach are actually two different things. Same with being a math genius and being a good math teacher. There are plenty who journey on the spiritual path. There are maybe some who attain, but out of those who attain, not necessarily all of them would make good teachers. And that's fine. So fundamentally, you have to ask the question, okay, if Samael, if you take him at his highest and you say, okay, he's legit, let's just give him that. Was he able to transmit that to those in his neo-Gnostic schools? The answer is no. They talk well, they appear polished on the outside, but they have no real knowledge of themselves, and they have slightly fanatical tendencies. And it's clear now, I have my biases. As I previously stated, I did have some connections with these groups. So let me tell you now why I left. On a particular night, the date and time do not matter, I was listening to some episodes of a podcast I follow, that being the Occult Confessions podcast. Great podcast, by the way, highly recommended. Now, on this particular night, I was listening to episode 20.12, where the hosts were interviewing a woman named Lynn Short. Lynn had previously been a Gnostic missionary in the same Samael order that was connected to the group that I was connected to. So she was literally an instructor, trained to teach the doctrine in her home with her husband in their home of Portland. So functionally, the home was the center where they did their rituals and held their lectures and invited randoms to come in and teach them and gather students and do retreats. And here's the weird thing, in these kind of Samael groups, the system is once a certain amount of time has passed, the missionaries who kind of started a group will usually leave to found a new one just from scratch in another city, and they'll generally get another missionary to come in and take over after them, to take over their students, over the friends, the people they've gotten to know over years. And so this happened to Lynn. She left with her husband, and they handed the keys over to their center, to this new missionary guy, leaving behind all of their students, all of the friends that they made, all of these people that put their trust in her and her husband. And then, wouldn't you know it, the guy who took over was a rapey groomer that sexually abused the female students. So you'd call the cops, right? Nope. No charges were ever filed. The occult groomer was given a slap on the wrist and told not to teach again. Then the society sent 2 other missionaries from Seattle over to gaslight all of the victims into not telling anybody what happened or complaining, because otherwise that would be bad karma. This is disgusting. And anyone with a functioning moral compass will not stand for it. At this point in time, I was already kind of out the door, to be honest, but Lynn completely confirmed all of the suspicions that I had, and I was gone. You see, I hadn't experienced anything at all that extreme. Like, there was always this ambient douchebaggery. There was this kind of elitism, this weird kind of, I'd call it a high control environment, like people very trying to regulate your behaviors, and you'd always kind of do something and then get told on and then be like, is it really me? Am I really in the wrong? And obviously you're trying to be introspective and self-observe, but no. Actually, all of your intuitions are correct. These are not good people. Narcissism, ignorance, and insecurities plague the inner worlds of all Gnostic missionaries. To be a member of a Samaelian Gnostic society is to be a part of a high-control environment where your behaviors are continuously critiqued to a point of dysfunction. Delusion is rampant in these schools, and every now and then you hear whispers of suicides, or even stories of it being found out that a guy was raping his wife. These people are not good people. Thank you, Lynn, for speaking out. I am incredibly embarrassed that I ever had any connection whatsoever with any of these people. Now granted, I'm not claiming the entire world of neo-Gnostic Samaelians are as bad as the Vatican or anything. Look, there might be a guy or a nice couple that are very sincere and have integrity and are trying their best. And if you're listening to this and you're a part of one such group and you think that that's how it operates, good for you. I'm not condemning a whole group of people. I'm just saying that the majority of them are ignorant, and if they're not ignorant, they're either abusers or they're enablers. You may try to brush aside that you're an enabler by saying that you're working on yourself, or that you're taking yourself out of duality, out of relativity. You're coming in from a non-dual perspective. This is a cope. When a tyrant comes into your city and starts abusing the people, abusing your friends, your family, you don't just sit down, meditate, and go non-dual. You stand up. And if you don't stand up, you're a coward. And cowards can never be initiates.